take away all the cars, we take away everything, and you have $2,000 to buy a car to drive around. What would that be?
What would it be? $2,000? Probably something American, mid-60s. Those are pretty easy to work on and pretty reliable. American cars didn't really get a bad reputation until the 70s and the 80s. That's when they were building kind of crappy cars. But up to that point, they were really world standard stuff. So you can get a pretty good American car with some personality and a big V8 for $1,500, $2,000, probably what it'd be. Mid-60s Cadillac is fun, something like that.
You always said that you don't really own these cars. You actually just nurture them for,
yeah, you try to save them. You know, I just bought that old steamer back there from a 75-year-old guy who's had it 30 or 35 years, and he got it from an old guy. And so I'm just hours away from being an old guy myself, so the next person will have it. So that's what it is, and we keep passing it down. I mean, I think we're finally at the point where it's become like artwork. I just saw that screen painting, just sold for $120 million. So if that can go for $120 million, suddenly $25 million for a Ferrari GTO doesn't seem that crazy. I mean, that one actually moves and you can use it and enjoy it, and it's, sort of kinetic artwork, as you say. So I think we're finally at the point where these things are being saved and respected as artwork, and they all reflect the personalities of countries that they were built in. German cars seem very German. Even people who don't know cars, they go, oh, that's an American car, obviously, or that's an English car. Oh, that looks Italian, and people know nothing about cars.
When you say that you're actually keeping some of these cars for their next owners, I'm sure there must be some exceptions where you have a real sentimental attachment to some.
Well, I have a sentimental attachment to all of them, but by the next owners, I mean I'm not going to sell them before I die. So, you just want to keep them running and keep them in good shape. Because once technology is lost, it gets lost forever unless somebody passes it on. That car right there that he's working on, the Doble steam car. Very unusual car. I had some Mercedes-Benz engineers come to the garage. And I told them it's a steam car that you can drive away in under a minute. Oh, it's not possible. That cannot be done. Oh yeah, no, it's not the way. It's not to steam. You must heat the water. And they were astounded by it because the technology that just came and went in their lifetime, And if someone doesn't pass it on, it just gets lost.
1907. Now, 1907, this car went 106 miles per hour.
This car.
Land speed record.
If you could sit down with anybody from the history of automobiles, who would you sit down with and what would you ask from him?
A Bugatti would be interesting, Duesenberg, Bentley. But the interesting thing is, these men did not work in a vacuum. A lot of these guys are very ego-driven, so consequently, if you work for me and you go, I invented this, now it has my name on it, and I don't know who you are. There are a lot of unsung heroes. There were other people who worked for Bugatti and Bentley and Duesenberg and certainly Miller in the United States. It was a team effort with somebody being the focal point, somebody being the driving force. But really, no one person can build a whole car alone. If you're a good engineer, it doesn't mean you're a good designer. For example, the Duesenberg brothers were not good designers, so the first cars they made themselves, although engineering-wise, hydraulic brakes, overhead cams, all kinds of things, but they looked stodgy, so people didn't like it. So you bring in someone with a sense of marketing and flair. So you would find, if you went to any of those great workshops, that even Enzo Ferrari was really not an engineer. I mean, he had people, Colombo and all these other people who designed Lampretti, they all designed for him, but it has his name on it.
So, like with a Formula One routine that everybody remembers the driver, whereas...
Yeah, nobody remembers, the guy who actually built the motor. To answer your original question, certainly Toro, Bugatti, W.O. Bentley. I mean, I think engineers will save the world, you know. Engineers, they used to say you can only feed 100 people with 1 acre of land. Well, now you can feed 1,000 people with 1 acre of land. Well, that's scientists, that's engineers, that's who comes up with it.
Which aspect is the one that really drives you towards cars? The engineering side of it, or maybe the stories behind them, or the looks?
Well, you know what's interesting is that we live in a time now where all world information is shared at exactly the same time. When you look at a car like the Tatra, magnesium overhead cam V8 hanging way out the ass end of the car. When you open up the transmission, all the gears are going the other way. But he built it without knowing what people on the other side of the Tatra Mountains were doing. So that's what he came up with. Look at Citroën. I mean, Citroën, they have their own way of doing things. It's completely different. Their suspension, everything is completely different than what anybody else is doing. I sort of miss that. I like cars that reflect the countries in which they live in. You know, they have the personalities of the car. I mean, American cars, we have such vast tracts of land. Well, they don't want anything tricky. Big engine, working very slowly, very reliable, go down the road. England, little windy roads, little sports cars, 1,500 cc's. You know, each country has its own. You know, England, they used to tax you by the bore. So, consequently, to get around that, they come out with long stroke motors. So, like the old Bentley's, a little piston like this with a long stroke and lots of torque. In France, they tax you by the displacement. So, they have little tiny pistons, just revving out loudly and moving quickly. So I enjoy that aspect of it, watching different nations come up with their own solution.
That particular steam car.
That was Howard Hughes.
130?
Well, in 1925, Howard Hughes won 132.5 in that very car. It's very powerful. That's why we had to build big disc brakes on it. The car weighs 2.5 tons. And all you have is mechanical brakes on the rear. You got to be able. In LA, you got to be able to stop.
In terms of acquiring new cars, which is the most exciting part for you?
Well, the tinkering part and doing the research and finding out all the information about the car. That's I enjoy that. That's fun. The one thing you learn is no matter what kind of shape a car's in when you get it, you still have to redo it. So consequently, I don't mind buying something that's not running because I got to redo it anyway. You know, one of the rules is you can't restore cars right, sell them and make a living at it because it's too much effort to do. So most people, they make them look real shiny and whatnot, and they run okay and they stop okay, and then they sell them, and then you get it and you're not happy. And then you realize you've got to go through the whole drivetrain once again, you know. So I find when you're looking for an old car, you find an old car that's complete but not running, or maybe somebody took the head off, fantastic. You get a good price on it because it's not running. Nobody else is interested in it. So that's kind of the way I look at things.
And do you get your hands dirty a lot?
Oh yeah, my hands are dirty now. Just shaking hands with you guys.
Why aren't there any Ferraris?
I don't have any. I like Ferraris. It's just that whenever I went to buy one, I could never actually buy one. I would always be, okay, I'm interested. All right, okay, I am not the actual owner. Mr. Hakaka, who's in Pakistan. And they all seem to have 29,000 miles on them. Then you go on the Ferrari registry and you go, oh, it has 29,000 miles. In 1972 it had 29,000 miles. It just seems to be, it's just hard to buy them. And now they've gotten so expensive that to me, the joy is in driving the cars. You know, when I got into this, you could pick up a Lamborghini, a second-hand Lamborghini, for a tenth of what a Ferrari was. Like a Spada's, you could get for $5,000, $6,000. The yellow Miura next door, I got for free. Dean Martin bought it new. His kid blew up the engine. A friend of mine was a teacher. He got it. This is back in the 80s. And the mechanic said, it costs more to fix than the car's worth. might as well junk it. So he said to me, you want it? I'm just going to junk it. I said, yeah, okay, I'll take it. Well, he's shooting himself now, but we put it back together and we got it running. And since Lamborghinis don't have engine numbers really, at least the early ones, it doesn't matter what it's got proper mirror engine in. And we put it together. Now, if that had been a Ferrari, it would have probably been $15 or $20 or $30,000. But Lamborghini was not the revered mark, 25 years ago that it is now. So it was just easier to buy Lamborghinis and some other exotics.
Yeah, I'm just still trying to process the sentence where you said that, oh yeah, I'm going to junk that Miura. It's just...
Well, it's funny, but you're young enough, so that seems ridiculous. But I'm old enough to remember when they were just old, worn-out sports cars that cost more to fix than they were worth.
We just couldn't decide if it is really possible that that's the sound of a Countach at high revs. Because we hardly hear a Countach at high revs, and it really sounded like a Grand Prix car, and we just couldn't decide if it really. Yeah, it's supposed to be there.
Let's see, let's hear it.
Ez egyessel talán kezdhetnénk, nem kell megijedni, hangos lesz.
That's not a Countach?
Well,
Valószínűleg mindjárt hallották.
boy, it sounds more Formula One to me than Countach, you say, not Gelato
Yeah.
Galato.
No, Countach.
Well, the other thing that's weird is the shift is so quick. It sounds. It sounds paddle shifter. It doesn't sound because most. I mean, you have that.
Yeah.
You got a long time. I mean, that sounds way too quick. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It certainly doesn't have stock exhaust on it. And that sounds like 9,500 RPM. It doesn't sound like any Countach. Well, just the way it's shit. I'm playing it again. It's possible, but I say no. 5 liters, I don't know. It just sounds way too high.
Can you tell me a bit about the Shotwell? I am really fascinated by its story, but
Well, the Shotwell is an interesting car. That it was built by a 17-year-old kid, and asked his father to get him a car, and they didn't have any money. So he and his father went down to the junkyard. They bought an Indian motorcycle engine, a 4-cylinder engine, and they bought a bunch of Model A parts and old Ford parts, and they built that car. And he drove it from Minnesota up to Alaska, all the way down to San Diego during the Depression, he and his brother. And they kept a scrapbook, and everywhere they went, people give them, the 2 boys in the homemade car, they'll get in the local newspaper, that kind of stuff. But it was, he went on to be a Pan Am pilot, and it was a very well engineered car, especially for a 17-year-old boy to build. And when he was in his 80s, he called me, I'd never met him, and he said, I know you like cars, I've got this homemade car, and I'm afraid that some motorcycle guys will take the engine out and then throw my car away. So I'll give it to you if you promise not to do that and fix it up. I said, okay. And so we got it all fixed up, and it turned out to be a nice story. His family came out. He had passed away, but his family came out, and we took them all for rides and things. And it's just that classic time in America when you could just build something and put it on the road without a lot of government interference, I wouldn't want to get hit in it by an SUV, but, just an interesting little piece of Americana. Like when I was a kid, I remember in high school we used to buy 59 Cadillacs, with the big fins, for like $300. The guys would enter them in demolition derbies because there was big crack, go out and smash them up. And then I went to Pebble Beach one time, And a buddy of mine said, oh, I'm going to bid on this 59 Cadillac. I said, how much? He goes, 75. I go, 7,500? That's a lot. He goes, no, 75,000. I go, 75,000 for 59? I used to buy those for $300. I mean, I knew they were expensive, but it just didn't dawn on me. And that's what happens, you know, even big cars like Duesenbergs and those kind of things. Well, during the war and when gasoline got expensive, they were just gas guzzlers. Get them out of here.
The Tata Nano.
You
It
know,
was the most surprising for me to see.
well,
it
that
here.
was fun. Ratan Tata is a friend of mine, and he sent me that one. You can't drive it on the street here in America. I mean, they're like, the police are like, we had to drain the fluids out, take the battery. Don't even think of going. They see that on the road, they'll grab it and crush it. So, yeah.
And how does it feel to drive?
Well, I've just driven it right around here, so we're going to road test it next Saturday. It's $2,700. I mean, it's a cam belt for a Ferrari.
Are there any, apart from the Tatra, of which I'm a big fan, but are there any other Eastern European cars that you fancy?
You know what it is? I like cars that were ahead of their time in their time. Cars that were noble failures because the engineers or the people put more into them than was necessary to sell it.
Like the Cosmo, for example.
The problem with the Cosmo was you're selling a Japanese product just 20 years after the war with an engine nobody ever heard of, a rotary, what's that, for the same price as a Corvette or an XKE. So you have this little tiny car that nobody had ever heard of with an engine that nobody knows how it works, or this big car with 400 horsepower. It's easy to, you know.
Destined to
Yeah,
fail.
so, I mean, that's why. Plus, they didn't know how to market it. You know, when you see ads for the Cosmo, it's all those Japanese guys with Beatle haircuts and playing rock and I mean, it's just funny. It was just that weird time in history, you know. That's where Lee Iacocca was very smart. Lee Iacocca, when he came out with the Mustang, originally it was supposed to have independent suspension. He goes, nobody cares about that. Just make it look good, put some springs on it, get it out the door. And sold it very cheaply and sold a gazillion of them. So,
and gave a lot of options for
yeah,
people.
and then you could get options if you wanted, but that's basically what it was. Most people don't live, breathe cars. It's like buying a washing machine or something else. And they like how it looks on the outside. Trying to sell technical superiority is very hard to do. The one I chased for a long time was the Chrysler Turbine car. There aren't any of those. I went to see that when I was 14 years old at the World's Fair. They had one going around a pit. And then my father going, well, we stand in line to see a goddamn car. This is crazy. Just watch a car go around. What the hell is that? My dad was not a car guy. So, yeah, that was, I think, a really technically interesting. I mean, that was a time in America when most Chinese and Eastern Europeans didn't even have piston cars. Americans are driving around in jet cars. That's unbelievable. You don't have a piston car, there's a jet car. That was crazy. You know.
And the jet bike.
The jet bike's a lot of fun too. That just shuts the Harley guys right up. You know, you pull up in the jet bike, it makes all sorts of people just back. Cool.
Recognize the car?
That is a. My first guess would be Toyota GT. Is that?
Bingo.
That is right.
Exactly.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
How many jeans shirts do you own?
There's a lot of these jeans shirts. You know, it became sort of a joke, and then people come and they give you one as a gift, and I go, thank you. And then you realize you have like 50 of them or 100 of them. You know what it is? Since when we do the web shoot for my J-Ron's Garage, I'll shoot a part of it tonight, and then I have to go back to work, and I'll come back tomorrow and shoot. So if I just wear the same thing, it's easy to match.
Yeah.
You don't really know. And plus, if you're
Very
watching, if you're looking at the clothes I'm wearing, you're not a car guy, okay? Just stop. Well, I mean, all the cars here are on the road. Every vehicle here you can take out at any time. They all drive. They're all licensed. You know, if you don't run them, they just sit. And